Okay, so I think we've got a really nice crowd here at Char's. Congratulations, everybody. What a nice evening we're going to have. Thank you all for coming to Char's Landing. Wow, it's full here. Yoo-hoo. Yay. Welcome. And Shawna made it. Yay. Whoops. I'm just going to set everything up. I'm not quite ready for, that we put the video on YouTube. Does everyone know that to share with their friends? Yeah, so you can look on my website, you can look on YouTube, you can look on my email, whichever way you do it, but you can share it with your friends. And also, I wanted to encourage everyone, if you want to have your voice recorded in this room, I need you to come up to the microphone. So it's really, really wonderful if you want to ask questions in between. So you can either come and use Char's mic, or you can use the one up front there to ask questions, or direct the questions to Derek, and Derek will repeat them so everyone can hear, including our friends at Zoom. Hello, friends. Yay! So it's a really nice night, and I'm going to hand it over to Karl, who's going to do the introductions, and I have turned on record. Thank you, Karl.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Char. Okay, Electric Mermaid Emcee Derek Hanebury is a Port-au-Prince writer of poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction who taught writing here at North Island College for many years. His latest book, Both Sides Now, is a collaboration of short fictions with two of his past students. His latest collection, entitled Something Else Altogether, is out.
Thank you, Karl, and welcome everybody to the Electric Mermaid hybrid operation. So great to see everybody here tonight, and I'm really excited about, it says join audio to start speaking. Don't, later. Okay, I'm going to cancel that. Yeah, otherwise I'm going to be talking through my computer and no one will hear me, right? So yeah, wonderful to be here. And I think we've got a good slate of open micers. And of course, we've got Peter Paul Van Camp here tonight, waiting on Zoom here to share some of his poetry with us, which is always a delight, and looking forward to it all. I want to start by saying we are on the unceded territory of the Hepetcheseth and Sishat First Nations here in beautiful downtown Port Alberni, and grateful to them sharing their land with us, that we can get together here tonight. And just a reminder for those of you out there who are feeling generous, there is always a chance to send a little donation along to Char at electricmermaidreads@gmail.com. You can e-transfer to her there, would be great. We're so grateful for what she does here. She says this is her favorite night of the month, even though she's run off her feet for 2 hours trying to keep everything on track here, but it's all good. So it's fun, that's right, and that's what it's all about, right? Yeah. And I'm always amazed at the feeling of community that we are able to engender in this hybrid environment that we're operating in. I always feel by the end of the night like just so connected to not just people in the room here, but people out in Zoom land as well. So it's wonderful that we can kind of have this intersection of the cyber world and the physical world here. So I'm not going to hold things up any longer. I want to get going this evening, and we've got a strong writer to start us off here, Kim Bothen, who is in person here in Port Alberni. And Kim is also a pretty accomplished musician. I had the pleasure of listening to her and her band play the other night here at Char's. But tonight she's going to share some of her own writing with us. So we're really glad to have you here, Kim.
High praise, Derek. High praise.
Yeah. Might have to bend that.
Thing that you're all of my college students. Okay, I know. If I get set up. Thank you. Oh, and I think I'm starting my timer. It's fine. It's fine. Absolutely. So, isn't it lovely to be here at Char's? Yeah, here we are. I got it right. Hi, everyone. I'm going to start with a couple of readings. This is a new endeavor for me, but I am going to start with a couple of readings from something I'm calling domestic. a series. So these first two, and that's domestic in its sense of home and or family relations. The first piece, it's my mother's 83rd birthday today, and we're very close.
Wow.
And my mother is the reason. She unfortunately is not on Zoom, but she's a big part of the reason why I write, sing, and dance, and teach, and make things. And so I wrote this a couple of years ago for her. My mother's marigolds. Today I planted, I'm not used to the podium. Sorry, I'm going to just move the mic down a little bit again. Sorry about that. You all have the benefit of all of my mistakes, right? My mother's marigolds. Today I planted my mother's marigolds. They came in a pale blue envelope with wooden boats and geese. It said orange and yellow marigold seeds, some velvets in here. They'd been picked in her own gardens and carefully dried, yellow and gold petals, faded and hanging on to seed pods. My mother loves a good patina. I notice all this because my mother notices all this. The reprise to that is that on Monday I received my second big batch of marigold seeds, and those ones came in a stitched cotton bag made of an colorful African printed fabric we've been sending back and forth for years. So happy birthday to Donna Mary Bothen nee Volterman.
Wow.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
My the second reading, also from the domestic series, is called Growing Roses. Can you hear me okay? Apparently I'm not used to the podium.
Is it okay out there in Zoom land? Everybody hearing that okay? Just, yep, we got a thumbs up there. Good.
Speak louder.
Yeah.
I have Growing Roses, Chapter 1. I have roses. 6 rose bushes. 6. 6 more rose bushes than I ever thought I'd have. And they're beautiful. I didn't think I'd ever have roses because I didn't think I could ever grow beautiful roses. And yet, there they are, right in my garden. This morning, as I sort petals from spent blooms for the Christmas potpourri, I imagine, I realize that growing roses is a perfect metaphor for how I'd want to live my life now. I understand affection for roses. I understand that they are strong and resilient and survive much, but with care and affection, reach their true potential. Glorious. Not new or original thinking. What took me so long? I know it's in details, seeing details, paying attention to details. I'm a detail person. I love details. I get lost in details. Roses are perfect for me. My roses are mostly adopted. 4 from Jim and Thelma next door. They grew in the bed beside the picket fence between our houses. Jim and Thelma and I didn't talk much. They were elderly, their own sons long gone, when my boisterous young family moved in next door. They had not been on good terms with the previous owners, easy to understand, an elderly alpha male and a middle-aged alpha male. And Jim and Thelma likely felt the loss of their lifetime neighbors, the Dunlops. The house, now my house, was the headquarters from an NDP campaign for a year, which must have been difficult for very quiet and private Jim and Thelma of 2773. Jim and Thelma and I eventually worked things out. One chilly day, I noticed Thelma huddled on her front porch, locked out of her house. I gave her tea and cookies. She didn't want to come into my house. Jim learned of that simple kindness, and I earned their trust, and ever after things were warm between us. I never thought to ask about the roses. Jim and Thelma kept things very neat, but were not avid or organic gardeners. One day, Jim died,
and Thelma followed soon after. Oh, I missed a portion. I have to put it in. I'm sorry. Jim was tall with broad shoulders, still handsome, Finnish, quiet, not really inviting. Thelma was tiny with soft white curls. She fluttered about, hung laundry carefully on a clothesline she wiped clean. The first time I heard Thelma call her serious, tall husband Jimmy, I knew I would love them. When I discovered their sons were selling the house, I asked for some of the roses. I adopted 4, 2 deep pink, I think a floribunda, 1 single petal, cherry red climber, 1 very long stem, dark red, raspberry scented, tea rose maybe, a favorite of my daughter, so I call it Olivia's rose. My own children are grown and flown, and there is now a boisterous young family in Jim and Thelma's house at 2773.
I think that's all we got. That's 5.
Well, that was 2 segments from domestic. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Kim, and that was wonderful and a very good tease. We want to hear more of that for sure. I love that line. My mother loves a good patina. That's priceless. Awesome. Okay, we've got next in line another Port Alberni in-person reader. Vicki Drybrough is going to share a new short story with us. So we're always excited when Vicki brings a new story. For those of you who don't know, Vicki was one of my partners in crime on that collection of short stories we did together. Both sides now, not so long ago. Seems like ages, but.
I think it actually was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it on? Okay. Oh. Is that it?
Perfect.
This short story is based on something that really happened, believe it or not. It's called Little Red Honda. It was a late Friday afternoon, and the highway was filling up with commuters and shoppers on their way out of the city. Feeling content with how my day had gone, I looked forward to getting home in an hour's time. I was doing 110 in a 90 zone when I heard the unmistakable sound of an older car engine performing near the top end of its RPM. I checked my mirror to find a 1982 Honda hatchback approaching at high speed in the left lane. The car was original. Its red paint was a little faded, but there were no dents that I could see, and the wheels were without dings or scratches. The tires were new. Perhaps most surprising of all, there were no telltale blue smoke coming out of the exhaust, no smell of burning oil. The driver was a slight woman in her late 20s with a straggly dishwater blonde hair that stuck out beneath a weathered red ball cap. She drove with an air of authority, not compromised by the wild-eyed adrenaline high of a joyrider or the desperation of someone racing to make up time. She sat comfortably with her right hand on the wheel at 2 o'clock, the other out of sight. The quick glance I got of her in profile suggested that she was average-looking with neither fine features nor remarkable complexion. Her jaw was relaxed, her chin slightly raised with her head balanced straight on her neck. No slumping forward or tilting to the side. Shoulders relaxed and easy in a dark blue windbreaker. The compelling thing about her was her confidence. The car and the driver seemed as one as they hurtled past, followed by an SUV and a white one-ton pickup with Alberta plates ending in NG. The more I watched, the more I realized the pickup was chasing her. There were no plates or stickers identifying him as a member of a fire department or a rescue squad. so he was not rushing to an emergency. There was something threatening about the way he drove so close to the SUV. It looked like he was trying to bully it into pulling into the other lane so he could get a clear run at the Honda. He might have been a slighted lover, an abusive spouse, but my money was on road rage. His ego couldn't tolerate following behind a small car being driven by a woman in the fast lane. NG, I thought, no good. The right lane was filled with vehicles heading out of the city with a few gaps in between. The Honda approached a slower car ahead and veered into one of the gaps in the right lane, then back out in front of the car she had been following. Smooth as silk. No brake lights, no horns honking. The white pickup switched lanes to get ahead of the SUV, pushing into the line of traffic to the sound of horns blaring and brake lights flashing all the way down the line. The girl in the red Honda repeated the maneuver one more time, then pulled away from everyone, winding it out to get a good run at the long hill ahead. Who was she, this female James Bond, who drove with the assurance of a race car driver? What was she doing on the island highway in a 40-year-old car, driving as if she was in a rally? She was too young to be the original owner. The car was in too good shape to have been driven regularly for 40 years. It had been kept out of the weather, away from moisture and temperature extremes. She obviously knew the car well and what it was capable of. Was she the one who had restored it to make it roadworthy again? Was she a mechanic? A race car driver's daughter? Traffic began to bunch up. At the top of the hill, the speed limit changed to 60, followed by a traffic light at a major intersection. She kept to the left, rounded the curve, and floored it. The light was yellow, and she sailed through just as it turned red, with the pickup now on her bumper. Ahead, the right lane was still plugged with vehicles going north. The left was empty, except for the Honda and the Ford. They passed out of sight as I waited for the light. She would probably merge into the right lane when she had the chance and exit to the resort community a few kilometers up the highway. She wouldn't be able to outrun the Ford once the traffic thinned. He would then be able to bully her however he wanted. 10 minutes later, I turned onto the 2-lane highway leading to the west coast. It was narrow and winding, scattered with potholes and depressions from heavy trucks. Regular drivers knew where the potholes and rough spots were and drove accordingly. Drivers from out of town found it challenging. There was no traffic ahead of me, so I was making good time, doing 80 in the 60 zones, avoiding the nasty spots. I came to the place where they had dug up the highway to install a new culvert and hadn't paved over it yet. There was a bump sign that didn't come close to describing what was ahead. Faster moving westbound traffic had scattered most of the gravel crews had packed into the hole, and the sharp gaping trench on the right side of the road was lethal. I swerved into the oncoming lane to avoid it and back again. Just around the corner, a wide gravel spot where the truckers sometimes pulled over to have a nap. To my great surprise, resting there today, with its driver's door hanging open, was a white 1-ton Ford pickup with Alberta plates ending in NG. The driver lay in the gravel examining the underside of his truck. As I cruised by, I was filled with a sense of exhilaration. The traffic gods were capricious and they were wicked, but once in a while, like today, they got it right.
The beauty of swift retribution. I love it. Thank you, Vicki. That was fabulous. All right, we're going to go to our featured reader now. Mr. Peter Paul Van Camp is joining us on Zoom here from Denman Island. So good to have you here, Peter Paul. And we're really excited to hear you read. You're going to share some new stuff you said last month when we were together.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. All right. And so I want to just tell people a little bit about you that don't know. I mean, you've been doing spoken word for 6 decades now, I believe.
Well, now, no.
Oh,
I've just begun my 6th decade. I've got 50 years behind me.
okay. Just, yeah, let's get the semantics right here. Beginning the 6th decade. But I do want to say, I believe that you should be credited, sir, for being the one who made sure that spoken word got included in folk festivals. Because I remember you being in folk festivals years ago, and kudos to you for keeping the profile high and keeping the standards so high. So we're really glad you're here tonight, Peter. Paul.
Thank
Thank you.
you. I wouldn't have been there if they hadn't invited me. I didn't just force my way in and said, spoken word here.
I know, but it was your reputation that preceded you because you performed so well. That's the thing. And so we're grateful for that, because anything that keeps spoken word alive is a good thing in our books. So
I do agree.
So Peter's got a few books that he put out, The Better Poems of Peter Paul Van Camp and When My Grandmother Cleans My Room, and a good 5 dozen other poems and 1 recipe for cornmeal mush. There they are. And maybe we'll throw in the chat where those are available. I'm sure they can get them from you directly, but
No.
No,
Oh, sorry,
okay.
they're out
Those
of
2 copies are the only 2 left. So
Oh,
no, I'm
okay.
I'm fresh out.
Okay, but you are open to offers as long as they're generous enough? Take them off your hands. No. Okay.
I'd like to keep one.
I'm going to turn it over to you now, Peter Paul, and give you your 10, 15 minutes here, and everybody knows there'll be some time for Q&A afterwards. 20 minutes all told. Yeah. So just relax and entertain us, and we'll look forward to chatting afterwards.
Well, I can't relax and entertain you. I'm all keyed up here. I've been looking forward to this reading for so long that it's almost a shame to do it. I don't know what I'll be looking forward to tomorrow. But I'd like to start off my portion here with, well, I think it was the first snatch of verse that I can ever recall hearing. It was my Aunt Gladys back in Coshocton, Ohio. She was doing the dishes, and I heard her say these words. I didn't know what they meant, but this is what she said. While the organ peeled potatoes, lard was rendered by the choir. While the sexton wrung the dish rag, someone set the church on fire. Holy smoke, the parson bellowed, as the flames ate up his hair. Now his head resembles heaven, for there is no parting there. Now, I was 5, and I didn't know what all of that meant, but I remembered it somehow. And, well, let's jump ahead about, from when I was 5 till about, let's say 63 years to the time when I wrote this next one. And it harkens back to the era when I was newly arrived in Montreal. I left Ohio as a teenager, and I came up to Montreal with the idea of becoming a performer of my poems. And now this is a work of fantasy that I'm going to read for you, although it is grounded in possibility. Because, you see, when I began reading in the coffee houses in Montreal, people would say to me, well, you're okay, but you're no Leonard Cohen. And that's how I first heard of him, you see. And I began to dream of one day, perhaps a situation might arise where I was living near the McGill campus, and I would daily walk across the campus to where I was working further downtown. And I thought maybe one day Leonard Cohen's going to be out there on the steps of the Arts Building with a crowd of his admirers, and he'll be reading his poems and playing his guitar, and I might approach him. And I'd say these words. This is called Do I Dare to Eat a Peach, which is a familiar reference to many poets. I wonder, Mr. Cohen, could I borrow your crowd? I'd admire to regale them if it were to be allowed. I shouldn't keep them very long. I'd hope to leave them wow. And I wonder, Mr. Cohen. He wonders, Mr. Cohen. I do wonder, Mr. Cohen. Could I borrow your crowd? Now, it goes on. There are quite a few other poets that I accosted in that way, but as time is already running short, I'm going to jump ahead to something which actually did happen. I'll read the rest of this when Mark Wonneck and I are appearing in person at Char's on May 13th. How's that? All right, then. Now, about a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic began, I was trying to write a book about this woman. This woman is my great-great-aunt Katie Quinn. She was an actress. She went on the stage as a very young woman, and she died as still quite a very young woman, but I never even heard her name mentioned until I was past 50 years old. And at that point, I realized that, by golly, I'm not the only one in our lineage who has gone on the stage. There's a tradition here. And so, as I say, I was trying to write a book about her, and I was making a rather bad job of it because I kept having to almost make things up. And I didn't want to do that. And I didn't want to annoy the spirit of my Aunt Katie by presuming too much. So I stopped writing the book after I wrote this poem, which I figured was probably as good as anything I'd come up with on the topic. So I call this one Ba, Ba, Ba. She wasn't the black sheep of the family. They had some of those before she came along. No, she was the calico sheep with the wings. Dab of rouge on her cheeks, a voice she could do things with. They'd never seen one quite like her before. So they let her run off to rub shoulders with wolves, all on her own, out in the weather, losing her handkerchief, finding her way, summoned by starlight, wooed by the moonlight, sweet-talked by the wind in the leaves of the trees. So I will leave that there. And again, another time I could talk for hours about Katie Quinn, but not this hour. So now here's something so new. Well, it's not the newest of the new, but it's a piece that has spring all over it, and it tells its own story, so I shan't over introduce it. It's called, I call it To Be a Robin. To be a robin is to be the first one up most mornings, with a throat that holds the promise of, until the buttered moment when, then giving muted voice to the enticements of the dawn. To be a robin is to own the warm, familiar uniform, the posture of the everyday, the profile of a proverb, since to be a robin is to learn the secrets of the early worm, then act upon this erudition, studiously come by. To be a robin is to enter every summer evening with a murmured lullaby, which takes the sunset seriously, but adds no histrionics, for to be a robin's not to know that all is well or otherwise, but only note in passing that it's been another day. To be a robin is to be a robin, one could say, and then to fly away. Now, all right, now, here's the one that's been burning a hole in my pocket since I wrote it. And I'm going to have to start this off with a little bit of a musical preamble. This is, for those of you who love the music of Ravel and Debussy and Vance In, so these were the French Romantic composers that I began to hear when I first came to Montreal. And I heard this piece, the piano trio in A minor by Maurice Ravel, when I was very young, and it struck me all of a heap. And I thought, boy, you don't get music like this back in Ohio, do you? And so I began to listen to more of his music. And so this one is, I'm trying to write about the music without really writing about the music, and write about the composer without really knowing much about Maurice Ravel. So here we have Le Petit Déjeuner in A minor. It begins thusly. Now, those are the opening measures of this piano trio, played on the piano, and then the violin and the cello come in, and it's wonderful. For the next 28 minutes, it's heavenly. Maurice Ravel, a most particular Frenchman, preferred to eat a simple breakfast, usually a soft-boiled egg with toast fingers sliced just so, and a demi-tasse of strong Turkish coffee, black, taken at mid-morning, would set him up for the day. Only one time, after a late night at the opera, with champagne and canapes to follow, the champagne a little flat, the canapes day old, the composer felt the need for something more substantial and prepared himself a great big pot of oatmeal. On a whim, as the gruel was thickening, he added in a generous dollop of orange sherbet, then another, followed by one more, which he stirred and stirred. And then in went a few shallots, a soupçon of béarnaise, a whisper of cayenne. He kept on stirring. Suddenly ravenous, Monsieur Ravel, still standing at the stove, ate his porridge straight from the pot with the wooden spoon, wondering as he did at the vagaries of appetite, and whether his current work, the trio in A minor, might not be getting away from him. It wasn't, not really. You have only to hear it to know. In any event, while he never breakfasted in quite that way again, in later years, Maurice Ravel would sometimes recall this singular stove-top exuberance as he tapped lightly on the shell of his egg, anticipating the golden yolk within. Well, that's once. All right. Now, I've just got one more and then a very short one, if that's all right. And now this one, you know, we poets, we sometimes have bad dreams about the work that we do and the places where we find ourselves doing it. And, you know, it doesn't help one little bit if we've been stuffing ourselves just before retiring for the night. And so I don't know if you're familiar with the old expression, refreshments before bedtime give you the willies. Well, they give me the willies. And that's the title of this. It's also called A Rhymester's Nightmare. And that's all you need to know. Watermelon, walnuts, jawbreakers, gefilte fish. It was an audience who had had all of me that it wanted. And likewise, I had had my fill of it. Not another speck of spittle need be added to the puddle. All the milk of human kindness within hearing had been spilt. It was mutually felt that all of us had had it, and we'd had it to the hilt. Peanut brittle, pickles, butter brickle, pork and beans. They had stood for all of my voice they were going to, and proved it, as they offered up a choice display of the spleen. Faced with that much shaken fisting, perhaps 'twas time I was desisting. The quality of mercy had been strained to smithereens. No tenderness between the speaker and his hearers, who'd a fierceness wolverine. Macaroni, candy corn, bacon, lemon swirl. All unseen, a hand now drew the curtain on this whirl of malcontent. I packed my grip, my flags and bunting furled. There's your hat, and what's your hurry? No, there'd be no further verses, yet still one heard the curses volunteered in such a volley like to cause one's locks to curl. Egad, such epithets were hurled as would cause one to surmise that ours is not a perfect world, but our When once I wakened from this reverie my snacking had provoked, the pie and Roquefort, all that clotted cream, swaying upright in my nightcap, I replayed the frightening mishap, quite relieved to learn my life was not so vexed as it had seemed. Waxing moon through window beamed. I yawned and curled up snug again, secure in my esteem, to sleep, perchance to dream. All right. I hope you caught the Shakespearean allusions in there. There were three of them. One from the Scottish play, one from Merchant of Venice, and one from Hamlet. Yes. Okay, here's my final sally. This is just a little thing, and then we'll open the floor to the questions, and I know there must be a few pending. This is something that I just wrote on the spur of the moment, and I'll just see to my grooming here. This is called A Recitalist Speaks His Piece. I groom with a comb, while I whisk with a broom. I peer into mirrors of risk with aplomb. I come from the womb, and I'm bound for the tomb. If you want me, I'll be in my dressing room. There.
That's a perfect piece to write as an end piece every time, right? Your signature ending, right? And you can get up and walk.
Well, I've got a few, but you have to have a few.
Those were so entertaining, Paul. And I just love the way you weave in the literary references and play with them and tweak them and tickle our funny bones at the same time. So we're going to open it up to the audience here at Char's and out there in Zoom land. If anybody has any questions they'd like to ask, and most certainly here at Char's, you can just pop up to the mic and ask them if you want, or you can holler them out to me and I'll repeat them, but it's probably easier if you just do it at the mic. And otherwise, we'll look to the Zoom crowd to see anybody can just unmute and make yourself known.
Hey, Mark, ask me a question.
So, here we go. We've got one from David Kippling here, who has come all the way from Gibson's Landing just to ask this question.
My goodness.
Yes, it's not even a question, but I was trying to think. People have their responses to watching you and hearing you, and so this is. I just think, what's the word? Bold, intrepid, unafraid. You go for it, headlong. And I think anyone who writes, occasionally thinks, dare I say this? I dare eat a peach. But shall I say this? And every word you say is out there, is headlong. So I think that it's admirable. It's kind of tells all of us, be brave, say it, instead of being a little cautious to make sure everyone understands everything's nice. No, you just go for it. So thank you for your boldness.
Beautiful. Thank you, David. And I'm curious about the evolution of that boldness, Peter Paul. Was that always sort of, as soon as you started writing, you just found your voice and fearlessly plodded on, or did that evolve over time?
Well, here's a quotation from an early piece of mine. "'Twas as a timorous lad I grew, to a cautious adult become. Still, somehow I'm conspicuous as the performing poet from that small town in Ohio where my early verse was scribbled, an upright, fairly decent burg where jests are rarely ribald." So I had a certain background that I was trying to get away from. And I found that once I got to Canada, it seems like a lot of the was gone, and I could express myself the way I wanted to. And it was the making of me, let's say.
Yeah. So the influence of Montreal was big, and I mean Montreal is pretty out there and artsy and supportive, right? So that must have helped. Well,
there were enough. What happened was I started going to the coffee houses like the Yellow Door and the Golem and the Karma and various other places, the Montreal Folk Workshop, and I was usually the only poet or poetaster or rhymester who would be there. Everyone else was playing a guitar or a banjo or a fiddle. And so this is how I got into sidled my way into where the music was being played. And it took me off on a path that I hadn't anticipated, which included the folk festivals that you mentioned and the coffee houses across the country and everything else. It could have been Toronto because I did the same thing there. It could have been Vancouver because I did the same thing there. It could have been Edmonton because Winnipeg, of course, I lived in Winnipeg for almost 40 years doing the same thing there. But Montreal was where I got my feet wet, and I figured if I could do it in a city that was as unfamiliar to me as Montreal then was, there was no stopping me. Unfortunately, some say, but no stopping me.
We're very grateful there was nothing stopping Peter. That was awesome. Any other questions out there? Okay, Kathy's got one too. She's coming up to the mic here to share it. Just hang on. There we go.
So do you ever get back to Ohio, or is Ohio finished for good?
Well, I wouldn't go there on a bet anymore. My hometown has turned so right-wing. Well, I guess it always was. Yeah, we just didn't notice it to the extent that it's noticeable now. I wouldn't feel very safe there. My brother still lives there. My father still lives there, come to think of it. But they like it. I don't think that I want to retrace my steps or reverse my path, even to the extent of visiting. So when we see one another elsewhere than in the Buckeye State. No, it's I've had to say goodbye.
Yeah, I hear you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you're here.
Me too.
Yeah. No, we're all very, very glad you escaped to Canada. Sanity. Yeah. Not that we don't have our own challenges, but any other questions out there? All right. I just want to remind everybody that that Peter Paul is going to be here with Mark in May, and that's May the 13th. And I know I'm going to be here. So is that going to be on Zoom too, Char? No, that's just straight up. So for those of you out in Zoom land, you gotta pull a David and Kathy and drive here or something, or fly here. But for the locals, I think it's going to be a full house and a really fun night. I mean, between your poetry and Mark's music, it's going to be magic.
Well, Mark and I share the hope that we haven't overexposed ourselves by being on the open mics, because when we were booked to play at Char's in December, no one seemed to want to buy a ticket or even rent one or even look in the window. So we thought we'd better build up our profile a little bit, and we're just crossing our fingers that we haven't overdone it to the point where people have said, "Oh, I've seen those guys. Why do I want to come out?"
I think you've cultivated a crowd, if not a cult following here in Port Alberni.
Or we can just tell everybody your Al Simmons is going to be here, and then really it's just you.
Okay, that's worked before.
We'll just tell it's Al Simmons is going to be here.
Okay, well, let's try that then.
There we go. And I don't know, Karl, I'm thinking, maybe we should just work on Char a little bit, and we can even maybe give a little bit of a discount to people who show up at the door and say, I heard him first on the Electric Mermaid.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think so.
Drop it a couple of down from, I don't know, from 18 to drop it down to 15, Char. Would that be good?
So 15 sounds good. I think. Yeah.
Oh, she's
So if you
nodding
say
over
that-
there.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
I think we totally support that.
Mermaid only.
Yeah. No, we're totally behind
Mermaid
that.
in
Yeah,
France.
we're happy to do that for
Mermaid
sure.
in France sounds a really good idea there, Derek.
Awesome. And even cheaper for seniors. I think we'll drop the seniors down to $10. How about that?
Seniors, so I like that. Sorry, people that are seniors out there. I'm sorry about that.
We'll bake some cookies. Yeah,
All right. Yeah.
There you go.
And Char will make a killing on the liquor because we're all coming.
Well, okay. Further to that, though, Mark and I were thinking that it might be a good idea for the person who maybe travels the furthest to see the show. We'll give them a kazoo solo in our encore, providing, of course, that we are called
There
upon
we go.
give an
So
encore.
anybody on Zoom land that wants to fly out here, like hey, maybe Jennifer? You're the farthest on the
Well,
Zoom.
there's some bait. Come on.
Kazoos.
People out there in Zoom land. All right. Fabulous. Let's have a big hand anyway for Peter Paul Van Camp, everybody.
Thank you very much.
That was delightful. All right. Okay, we're coming back to an in-person open micer now. We've got Victoria Roscoe-Roumanis here is going to share some work with us. Good evening, Victoria. Lori's going.
Hello.
There we are.
Good to see everybody too, and thank you very much, Peter Paul. Oh, is that right? Around? Yeah, Peter Paul. That's right, not the other way around. Very, very enjoyable. Thank you. As was everybody else who read earlier. So I think before I've mentioned that I grew up on a farm, and I tend to go back to my days there, the things that I write. This one is called Baling, as in baling hay. A young girl lies in the grass. Grass, beautiful, beautiful green grass. Long grass swaying in time with the breeze. The movement is halted when scythes cut through the long grass. Sun, hot and drying, releases the amazing fragrance of grass maturing into hay. Balers hum, bundling up the dried grass, magically shooting out rectangular bales of delicious hay. Bales just the right size for building walls for her horses to jump over. Until the cart arrives to carry the rectangular bales to the barn, cattle will have this delicious feast throughout the winter. Amazing. Bales of hay, bales of hay. How I remember and love those bales of hay. And I especially loved playing with them, making forts out of them as well with my friends. So lots of memories with bales of hay. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going back a few years, actually. My boys, 3 of them, the youngest was 4, a 6-year-old and a 12-year-old. And I love poetry, and I try to introduce my children to poetry. And 37 years ago, I took them over to a poet's corner. I'll tell you a little bit more about what that date was in 37 years ago. But first of all, I'll read the poem. And then I'll tell you who I didn't actually write this. Somebody else did, and somebody else was reading it. But it's something that stayed with us, and my boys as well, because we walked around the house, for months afterwards, reading parts of this poem. I hope you enjoy it too. Round bales of hay. Round bales of hay, round bales of hay. Some mornings I waken, and why am I thinking of round bales of hay? All of my thinking, while yet I am blinking, goes round bales of hay. At breakfast, bowl and spoon are clinking, round bales of hay. And as the orange juice I am drinking, round bales of hay, remarkable. Round bales of hay, round bales of hay. Some days the only words I say are round bales of hay. Round bales of hay, round bales of hay. Has the whole world gone hijinking? Round bales of hay, everyone I meet is winking. Round bales of hay, oh bedlam, I believe I'm drinking. Round bales of hay, my universe is surely shrinking. Round bales of hay. Round bales of hay, round bales of hay. Why do you sit and stare at me that way? Round bales of hay. Well, say it if you have something to say, you round bales of hay, or rather bound hails of ray. I mean, brown rails of, say, bail me up, wheel me away. I say no other words today. Close the window just halfway. I like the fragrance, strange to say. Would you send supper on a tray? Some broth, perhaps, or consommé. A little rest. I'll be okay. Just keep those round hay bales at bay. Now, I wish I could take credit for those wonderful words, and sure I'm not giving justice to the gentleman who wrote this, but his name was Peter Paul Van Camp, and I heard him at Expo 86, and they had a poets corner there, and it's been with us ever since. I lost the words several years ago. I really wanted to get the words, and I went on North by Northwest. I said, would anybody have access to these? And somebody sent it in. So I sent copies to my sons, and well, where we are. And the first time I heard Peter Van Camp here, I thought, I know this voice. I know this voice. And then it came to me. And so I'm very happy to meet Peter Van Camp, Paul Van Camp again. And it's so exciting. I mean, I'm not sure if he's excited because he didn't want to read this, so I've read it. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
My goodness.
Yeah.
1975 came rushing up to me.
76. Oh, 75. Oh,
I beg to differ.
no. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I told you had a cult following here in Port Alberni, Peter Paul. In fact, it sounds like it extends out into the world now with her children being gone. So it's all
There's
good.
no accounting for what happens. It just you open your mouth.
You never know the influence you'll have. That's a good thing. Beautiful. All right, our next open micer is here live in person as well. Mr. Dean Lamont is going to share probably another Ned story, I'm hoping, but maybe different. He doesn't have the cardboard box on his head this month, so he's moved on from the box stage. Yeah, all right.
Can't hear you.
Hang it.
And saw things from the other side. Okay, so here we go. Put the harmonica the right way. Well, I've been working like a devil, Lord, just to pay my rent. I've been working like a devil, Lord, just to pay my rent. Well, I ain't got a lot of toys, so sometimes I wonder where all my money went. Well, I've been filling up that bucket. I've been working almost every day. I've been filling up that bucket, boys, working almost every day. And then along comes the landlord and sucks all my money away. Well, you sure are a looker, honey. I thought you were heaven sent. You sure are a looker, baby. I thought you were heaven sent. But oh, baby, you got to help me pay the rent. And then I came to Port Alberni. I started to visit my sister, and I started looking at real estate, and I thought, geez, they must have forgot a zero on the end of the properties. So anyway, I borrowed some money from a relative and went up north and worked at some horrible job for a while to pay it. And then I saw things from the other side. Well, I'm a landlord now. I got my big fat Jersey cow. I'm a landlord now. Woo! I got my big fat Jersey cow. I'm gonna ride that gravy train. Woo! Look at me now. But things weren't quite that easy. For example, one of my first tenants was a young woman. She said she was a tree planter, worked out of town most of the time. Ooh, music to a landlord's ears. Didn't really drink, might have a toot once in a while. Oh, well, that's cool. I might have a toot too. But then things started going downhill. She moved in her boyfriend. Ooh. And then I was building a little shed in the backyard, and she thought I was building a house, so she threatened to turn me into the authorities. Well, she said she was a planter, and once in a while had a little too. She said she was a planter, oh boy, and sometimes had a little too. Well, then she moved in her boyfriend with those big noisy army boots. Yes, and then oh, I wonder what they're smoking that's driving them insane. I wonder what they're smoking over there that's driving them insane. 'Cause every time she sees me, she's got to rattle my chain. Well, I got the landlord blues in my Port Alberni shoes. I got the landlord blues down in my Port Alberni shoes. Oh, Lord, I got 'em. I got the landlord blues. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dean. I think we'll get Jennifer Wenn to book you a gig in Fryfogel's in London, Ontario. Yeah, they must be ready for that there by now. A little blend of spoken word and blues. Beautiful. All right. Our next reader is live in person here in Port Alberni as well. We've got Shawna here. Going to share some more poetry with us, we're all hoping. Good to have you here. And she's a spotlight reader tonight, so she's got the 10-minute floor all available to her at her leisure to give us a little bit of a deeper dive into her work. Welcome,
Yes.
Shawna.
Thank you. Can I put this up a little bit? Oh. Thank you.
There we go.
That was awesome, Dean. You sounded like a natural blues singer
Yeah.
and storyteller. And I had to take a second take when David came up because I usually see him on Zoom
Yeah.
coming from Ontario. So
Or
yeah, it was a little
Gibsons.
confusing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for the additional time for this poem. 5-10 years ago, probably, I couldn't quite imagine really sharing any poetry. Definitely not the particularly personal ones, because I've tended to be someone who's so deeply private. And but there's a greater calling. I think so many artists can feel this greater calling, and there's only so long you can keep your heels in the ground before you eventually surrender, essentially. And when I did that, that's when I started finding out about the open mics, and it still continues to be that process for me. So I've come a long way on a personal level in terms of being able to openly share with you my path. So this one, like I mentioned, is very personal, and it's a calling to share my broader perspective on my experiences and my path of feeling my everything no matter what. And I guess I want to say before sharing this one that it's never to impose on anybody else's path. I think every path is as valuable as the other, but it's a calling to share my own. So speaking of grandmothers, my grandmother turned 99 this month. And many years ago, she shared or sent me a letter, and it said to trust thyself. And so I think that connects in with this poem, which is really about also knowing yourself and allowing yourself to just feel everything and just allow everything, even if you can't make sense of it at the time. So with that said, this one is called Fly on the Wall. I took what seems to have been the road less traveled, allowing myself to tighten and then to unravel. I felt my way through everything, no matter the cost, no matter the sting. If a doctor was a fly on the wall at different points in my life, he or she would have attempted to shut me down, no matter the cost to my life, to my mind, to my heart, to my body, to my soul, doing a lot more damage than what would be done if I was simply allowed to flow. Like that time in my life when I could hardly get out of bed. I tried to hide from everyone what felt like bricks on my eyelids and in my head. All I wanted to do was sleep. All I wanted to do was seep. During this time, I didn't understand what was happening because I didn't understand me. All I know looking back on this time is that I desperately needed to be, just be. If a doctor was a fly on the wall, he would have diagnosed me with depression and tried to drug me up. Rather than taking the time to understand, it was decompression from all of the years that I was unable to speak up. And oh, how beautiful this time was, for it taught me and it grew me, it expanded me, a gift so I could know me. Or that time in my life when I was in a new relationship. Call it a first love. Love, hate, love, hate. A tumultuous ride that was difficult to hide, reflecting the inner world that had never before been revealed on the outside. An intense relationship that triggered the pain, triggered the hurt, triggered the shame, and what a beautiful release it became. The first time when all of me was able to be set free, to scream, to be as I was. Pushing him away, then wanting him to stay, the repressed girl inside was finally having her say. And it was tumultuous and abusive too. Both the he and the I was that too. If a doctor was a fly on the wall, she would have diagnosed me with borderline personality disorder and tried to drug me up. Rather than taking the time to understand that this was a magnificent time in my life, when my whole self was finally allowed to show up. And oh, how beautiful this time was, for it taught me and it grew me. It expanded me, a gift, so I could know me. Or that time in my life when anxiety and panic got a hold of me so bad. These were the years when I was disconnected and sad. Partying on the weekends and go, go, go at work, not facing the loneliness, not facing the hurt. I was so fast asleep, disconnected from myself. I forgot who I was. I betrayed my own self. I'll never forget that evening when I started shaking with angst and fright. I didn't know what was happening to me on that dark autumn night. So I jumped in a cold shower and watched my knees bash back and forth. Then called a friend to take me to the ER room at the hospital in the north. I was later hooked up to an ECG monitor and told I had a panic attack. I knew this was simply my soul trying to get me on track. A doctor later diagnosed me with chronic anxiety disorder and tried to drug me up. I said, "No, I'll stick with the counselor, but thank you very much." A well-intentioned doctor, a lovely woman too. But this is all they are taught to do. To numb out the calling, to numb out the voice, to numb out the intuition, to downplay the choice. And oh, how beautiful this time was, for it taught me and it grew me, it expanded me, a gift, so I could know me. Then there was a time in my life when I let go of my entire life, of my job, of my relationship, of my friends, and my home. The calling was so deep to return to my roots on the island, now home. I'm not sure what it was about letting go of it all, because it triggered a fear of loss and of losing it all. I became compulsive, check, check, check. I became obsessive, a mind that would not rest, over-checking the doors and checking the lights. Even with food, I became afraid to take the last bite. It was insane. My brain had taken over me. Yet quickly I knew what was happening to me. My spirit, my soul was starting to flow, and this made my mind scramble as I wanted to know my broader, my grander, my powerful self. My little EGO was afraid of myself, with a capital S. If a doctor was a fly on the wall, he would have diagnosed me with OCD and tried to drug me up. Rather than taking the time to understand this is what happens when the soul within the human begins to wake up. And oh, how beautiful this time was, for it taught me and it grew me, it expanded me, a gift, so I could know me. Then there was a time in my life when I felt so lost and confused, sitting at rock bottom, not knowing what to do, having dark thoughts about not wanting to be in this world. Oh, but the agitation within the shell is what creates the pearl. Still, I didn't know what to do. There was no one I could turn to get unstuck, to move out of a rut, felt so alone and messed up. I was holding on tight, didn't know how to surrender the fight. Days when 2 middle fingers went up at the light, I felt totally abandoned, did not recognize the call. Not realizing all I needed to do was let go of it all. To recognize I was in the perfect place too. That was all I needed to do. If a doctor was a fly on the wall, she would have diagnosed me with God knows what and tried to drug me up. rather than taking the time to understand that I would never give up. Thoughts can be thoughts. Pain can be felt. This doesn't mean this is the end of the road in the self. Our lowest place is only the start. The greatest journey we will ever take is from the fear of the mind back to the love of the heart. And oh, how beautiful this time was, for it taught me and it grew me. It expanded me, a gift. And now I know me. Thank you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Don't run away. Awesome. Thank you for sharing your heart with us and sharing your story with us, and inspirational as it is, and beautifully told. I love the way you went back and forth through the varying permutations as you came towards health and awakening. And yeah, for those who've had their souls awakened, they realize that, yeah, all that dark stuff from the past was absolutely necessary, painful as it was, but look where it gets you, right? So beautiful. Thank you. Really enjoyed that.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So instead of going to Gibsons tonight, we're going to go right back to Port Alberni here, and live and in person, we have Kathleen Vance is going to share some of her prose with us, I'm guessing. Yeah. Yeah. And for those of you in the audience here, just a reminder, we are going to hang around afterwards, especially having David and Kathleen here from out of town, and have a few drinks and chats, whatever. And so hopefully everybody can stick around. It would be wonderful. Kathleen, the floor is yours.
Okay, am I on the mic? God, no, don't say God. Okay, is that the mic?
Yes.
Okay, gun. Can you get me a gun? Dora could hardly breathe. She prayed the man on the line hadn't heard her press the listening key. Until then, she had been following all the rules. As soon as the light had come on for the man's call, she had plugged the cord into the jack socket. Then she had pulled her talk switch forward, asked number please, located the jack for the number he wanted, and briefly touched the plug to the jack's rim, listening for a click. Because she heard no click, she knew the line was free, and so she had inserted the plug and pulled the switch down to make the phone ring. A voice answered, and she had said, "Hold the line, please," exactly as the telephone company had taught her. The telephone girls, hello girls, everyone called them, had had hours of elocution lessons in which they practiced their sing-song lines until they could say them in their sleep, a real plus for the night shift. Once she knew the two parties were connected, she had pulled the switch to the middle, normal position. The switch was supposed to be kept in that position until the light came on again to show the call was over, when she would unplug both jacks. But meanwhile, Dora had ever so softly pressed the switch forward to listen. She knew she could get into trouble. Why, just last week, on her only 10-minute recess, she had read the notice on the bulletin board in the operator's parlor that a girl had been dismissed for listening in on a call. Dora knew the notice had been a warning for all the girls that disobeying any rule was considered grounds for immediate dismissal. So why was she listening now? Dora wasn't a rule breaker, but it was the middle of the night and she was so tired, and she thought the strangers' voices might keep her awake. Climbing the 5 flights of stairs at 9 o'clock at night to start her shift had been enough to wear her out. The building had an elevator, but the girls weren't allowed to use it, though no one said why. Dora sat stiffly upright in front of her switchboard, both feet planted on the footrest. Crossed legs were another ground for immediate dismissal. Facing straight ahead, she sat so close to the girl next to her that their long black skirts overlapped. Dora knew she had been hired partly because she was tall and skinny with long arms. The company wanted to fit as many girls as possible in a long row of nearly ceiling-high switchboards, and each girl needed to be able to reach the 300 jacks in front of her. Dora stifled a yawn. A yawn would have meant another rule broken. The girls were not allowed to move except to plug in jacks and pull switches. The other week, Grace had been so tired that she had fainted. That time it was good the girls were so squished together, because then otherwise Grace would have fallen from the high chair to the floor and broken an arm or smashed in her head. As it was, she just fell across the girl next to her, who propped her up and hoped the supervisor hadn't seen. For every 10 girls, there was a supervisor walking up and down, watching everything they did. Luckily, the supervisor had been busy helping another girl handle a prank call. Dora had asked at the office if she could change to the day shift, but they had said, "If you're too tired, we have plenty who are lining up for your job." Dora prayed Mabel wouldn't blow her nose loudly, as she often did, despite it being strictly against the rules. Not that you could blame Mabel. She had another cold. One of Mabel's callers, a friendly woman who really cared, said, "You sound terrible, dear. You should go home and rest." But there were no paid sick days, and if Mabel stayed home, she would have to pay another operator to take her place. Who could afford that? Dora prayed that Abigail wouldn't start rustling the pages of that letter from her Ned, who had gone off to seek his fortune so they could finally marry. Whenever she didn't have a call, Abigail would be sneaking a look at that letter. Dora knew it was wrong, but she was so fond of Abigail that she hoped Ned didn't find his fortune, at least not any time soon, because then Abigail would have to leave because telephone work was only for single women. Abigail said that when Ned made his fortune, she was going to still come to work for one last shift. And when all her switchboard was covered with calls, she was going to shove up the talk switch and yell, "To hell with all of you," and pull out all the plugs. Dora thought Abigail looked as forward to that day as she did to her wedding day.
Thanks for that, Kathleen. Anybody who says that, you know, things have gone from bad to worse should read that story. Because that wasn't that long ago. Yes. And I don't doubt the historical authenticity of many of those details. Absolutely. Wow. Amazing. Thank you. All right. And another reader from Gibson's Landing is joining us here live and in person at Char's. David Kippling is going to share some prose with us. And congratulations with your recent publication in the Globe and Mail, Dave, in the obituary section. And I was so glad it wasn't your obituary, but
I once saw, was a young Billy Two Rivers died. When I was a teenager, Billy Two Rivers was a professional wrestler. He was wonderful. He came into Britain.
Come close to the mic there, David.
Oh, yeah, it was, with my voice, you don't need a mic. And he was fabulous. We cheered him, and he had, a mohawk haircut, which I didn't know what it was, and he had ceremonial robes. I didn't know, but the good thing, he was one of the goodies. And the night that I saw him in Wellingborough, he was fighting Ivan the Communist direct from Moscow, Russia, said the poster. Anyway, Billy Two Rivers, famous Mohawk, and he died a month or two ago, and I just wrote to Globe and Mail saying he was one of the good guys. And they put it in the obituary and people saw my name and he said, David's in the obituaries. I said, no, it's not me. And all this is good. These are brand new glasses. I got them yesterday because I had cataracts and these are supposed to be able to, can you hear me on this?
Yeah.
Okay. So here we go. Here we go. I grew up in Britain and this is set nearby. The doorbell rang and Tommy Duggan froze. It was the polite sing-song warble of all the nice suburban homes he'd never lived in, though he'd broken into a few. He ducked behind a stuffed armchair and held his breath. Maybe it was just girls from the local Orange Lodge, urging the faithful to parade on the glorious 12th. Could be the ever hopeful Sinn Féin with another petition, though there were few Republicans out here in East Belfast. Or it could, Tommy thought, be a sad old vicar removing his hat, ready to apologise for bringing the bad news. God knows it might even be British troops dishing out warning leaflets, except that they only did that down in the slums of Ballymurphy and Bogside, not out here where people had jobs and owned houses with heating that worked and indoor toilets and television sets. Tommy peeked over the chair back towards the frosted glass around the front door and reached for his knife. Damn, it had been a piece of cake till now. Tommy could smell an empty house, could tell from the area around a place whether there was anyone home. This wouldn't have been so simple. He only had to crack a kitchen door glass, reach with his coat sleeve around his wrist, and fish around for their spare key on a hook. God bless the suburbs and their spare keys. He struck it lucky. You can tell straight away from the furniture and the carpets. Look at the stuff on the mantelpiece. Trophies, medals, some kind of certificate from the government. No crucifix, no bleeding heart of Mary. Not that Tommy cared. So what if they were Protestant? He'd stolen from both sides. And once from a Punjabi house. At least it looked kind of Punjabi from that TV show on Thursdays. Once he'd taken a statue of a Buddha because it looked like it could be gold, but the scrap man laughed and said it was only paint and handed it back. Tommy glanced along the framed photographs. Shit, if that the husband there, him in that uniform, next to the Lord Mayor of Belfast, and we know where he goes to church, then mother of God, muttered Tommy, I'm robbing a cop's house. Calm down, he told himself, at least it means they're respectable people. So there'll be jewellery. The wives always have jewellery, don't they? And the silverware would be real silver. And just perhaps a stash of notes in the wardrobe. Some coppers don't hand in all they seize, do they? And look, birthday cards. So there might be brand new stuff still in wrapping paper that he could sell round the pubs. The ding-dong chimed again, and a head silhouetted itself briefly behind the rippled glass. Tommy's armpits prickled. He could not be caught. They'd give him 2 years this time. Now it was fight or flee, as his old man used to laugh. When the blue lights flash outside and a pair of hard men run up the steps, if you're smart, son, you'll flee bloody quick. Don't be a hero. He waited. The reek of lavender polish made him want to sneeze. The heavy furniture's gold brocade and the polished ornaments hurt his eyes, and the thick piled carpet snagged his cheap runners. He was suffocating. He hated these houses. They made him feel like shit, like a little kid afraid. Families in these houses had birthdays with cakes and cards. Look at the cards, and nice presents, and friends and neighbours all smiling, and nobody ever sick or short of money, or the roof leaking, or the electricity cut off. Tommy bit down on his knuckles. The door chime repeated, 1, 2, like the wah-wah yelp from a squad car. A dog somewhere started off. The bike, for Christ's sake, he'd leaned that bike he'd stolen right against the corner of the house. Yes, my lord, the defendant's fingerprints were recovered from a stolen bicycle found on the premises, my lord. His mates would die laughing. Tommy arrested breaking into a copper's house. He'd never live it down. Slow down, son. His old man's voice echoed from years ago, before they'd dragged the old fella off to Long Kesh and locked him up with IRA men and Belfast gangsters. Slow down. Tommy looked down at the knife in his fist. A knife he'd stolen from a hiker's backpack in the pub last week. Leather handle, thick stainless blade, a lovely bit of kit. But he shouldn't have brought it with him. That's a dangerous weapon charge right there, an intent to harm charge, and a bloody good hiding when they got in down the station. Silence. No more bell. Tommy's heart slowed. Shame at his fear drove the knife hard twice into the chair back. Tommy crept along the walls to the door and listened. A car started and drove off quietly, then nothing. He cracked the door open an inch and saw the bunch of carnations on the cardboard box labeled Fragile Wine with birthday tape and curling red ribbon around it. Tommy hoisted the flowers and wine indoors and sank onto the bottom stair. These lucky bastards. Tommy never in his life got presents like this. Jesus, 6 bottles in there at least. He'd never even drunk wine, except that taste when he'd ventured for a bet into a Protestant service, and never since. God knows he deserved a drink now. Tommy grinned, slipped his blade under the cardboard lip, and lifted it. All across Malone and Knockdean, out as far as the army listening posts at Somerton, even to the RU stations on the Antrim Road and the Shankill, came the sudden hard thump of a grey low cloud erupting and the pavement shuddering, trees thrash, stripped of leaves, dustbins rolled in the gutters, then the slow hail of grit and glass and roof tiles and the racing echoes smacking back and forth off the surrounding hills and further still, and then nothing. Yeah, look.
Wow. Okay. I did not see that coming. That was wonderful. Beautiful, beautiful. What a powerful story, David. Wow. Okay, we've got another local reader coming up next. Aloma Watson is joining us here for the first time, and we're so glad to have her here. Big hand for Aloma. And we all know what courage it takes to get up there sometimes to read your work for the first time in front of a live audience. So we applaud your courage and want you to know we have all been there.
Thank you so much. Pleasure being here tonight.
Good.
And it is my first time reading.
Just bring your mouth a little closer to the microphone there, Aloma. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek.
Okay.
And a pleasure being here tonight. And I've got just a few short poems that I've just out of the blue. They come and I need to grab a pen. And sometimes the paper is atrocious what I write on, but I usually keep the words. Okay. I was in the doctor's office one day, and you know how you sit.
Closer to the mic there, Aloma. Yeah.
I was in the doctor's office, then you know how you sit on the chair in the waiting room, and usually there's paint scratched off the arm of the chair or whatever, and I was looking at that, bored and waiting for the doctor to come in, and all of a sudden that's when I needed a pen, and I thought, how many, I wonder, have sat in this chair, hearing the good news, the bad news, some wishing they wore clean underwear. Oh, how many have sat in this very spot, waiting to hear what the good doctor thought. Give me more time, give me a pill. Pardon me, whether I listen or not depends on my will. I'm silently screaming my pain levels high. Good thing I know I'm not going to die. Thanks again, doctor. I'll see you again. If I live to my next appointment, I'll be back in. Now, a little while ago, a few years ago,
Close that mic there. Yeah.
I keep forgetting, sorry.
Okay.
I had gotten out of the hospital. I had a massive heart attack and I could not have it corrected. Anyways, I got home and I started thinking because I had time on my hands and I was still here on the land. So I found a pen again. I wrote, "Oh, I wonder if you'll just let me get close. I'd be happy just on the other side of your fence, so that my eyes and ears would know that I died. Perhaps out of fear I cried. But the fact is, dear Lord, thank you for your kind grace. I thought I'd be all alone and afraid of what might be home. But I see and know now that I am on the other side, just on the outside of your fence." Thank you. Now, I have a lot of different hobbies, but when I was little, my grandmother taught me how to fix clocks. Well, she fixed watches. I can't work that little. So I needed another pen because I had just finished fixing a clock that I had bought. Hi there, my name is Clock. You hung me on your wall and never gave me another thought. Tick, tock, tick, tock. No matter where you go or who you're with, I'm keeping track of time. I just want you to know. Tick, tock, tick, tock. In time, all things will come to pass. For no man stands still, but I will last. Tick, tock, tick, tock. I will continue with time, counting out yours and theirs, ticking the present into the past. Yes, I mean yours, not mine. Tick, tock, tick, tock, for I am just a clock. Tick, tock.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you so much, Aloma. And please come back. Those were wonderful poems. Absolutely wonderful. All right, we're going out to Zoomland now. We're going to travel all the way to Middlesex County in the heart of southwestern Ontario, where Jennifer Wenn is waiting to share some poetry from probably some more from her new book, I'm guessing. Am I right, Jennifer?
I'm going to do something new tonight, but I'm going to mention the book.
Good.
Here Through the Silence. It's out there on Amazon. Please do have a look at it. I think it's great value. There's lots of stuff here for the price, especially for a poetry book. I'll mention quickly, April 21st, I'll get the information in the Facebook group, but there's an online Zoom thing with Trish Sala from Queen's University and myself. It's a feature thing from the Feminist Caucus of the League of Canadian Poets, focusing on trans female poets. So it's kind of a neat event, but I'll get it up. So think about dialing into that. And the information, there's the information. Thank you, Karl. So yeah, check out the website and the book and everything. What I was going to do tonight were 3 short pieces that are newish. Back in the fall, Gordon Hill Press asked me to submit some things to an anthology they're doing that concerns environmental collapse and mental health. So that was the theme. And so I have 3 things I'm just sort of test flying. They all approach this subject in pretty different ways. The first one's called Fire and Flood. From Australia aflame to Pakistan drowning, an apocalypse is shaking itself awake. Whistling past a threatening graveyard, I summon a bubble of distraction and inattention, but signs and portents slither in through unseen fissures and coalesce into dystopian visions. With Mad Max and Furiosa, I tear around a post-doomsday wasteland in desperate quest of almighty fuel, the only real goal to avoid being vulture food, but any Pyrrhic desert triumph is swept away by a nightmarish tempest, whereupon I join Lear and his fool, on the blasted heath, and while the erstwhile king howls at the gale and deluge, I cower, uselessly, looking for a sign, hoping for a sheltering tree with roots deep enough to anchor in blazing barrens, strong enough to defy the moor-lashing storm. Just one craggy testament of life while I await the Godot of tranquility. Well, there's three things mashed in there together. The second one is, as I say, it's a different look at this theme. It's called Ode to an Empty Lot. Empty is in quotation marks. Mike, my bicycle guy, first made me look, seeking a non-literary path to reducing head noise, prodded by my neglected figure. I rediscovered two-wheeled pedaling, found my way to Mike, listened, and followed his gaze. A green gap in urban concrete, threatened by all-conquering pavement, tagged as empty, but sheltering a precious little ecosystem from grasses to beetles to birds, a tiny cousin to ancient West Coast forest sanctuaries, proffering spiritual serenity in the face of rapacious chainsaws. I saw too in Mike's patch a mirror of my search's goal, a precious little interlude of peace amidst tumult, fragile and fleeting, but yearning for hope and renewal, in recollection of Lamont once decimated primeval jungle, now the domain of life searching within, recalling the wonder, life reaching out in collective resurrection of the memory. The little lot was still thriving last time I went by, sending forth optimistic seeds of rebirth, corporeal for its modest tract and perhaps further afield, and transcendent ones taking root in those led to pause and see. And if you happen to look at the book, you'll see in that piece there's a back reference to two of the ones that are in there, Carmena Walbrin and Lamont Rainforest, that are in the new book. That's what I'm referencing there. And the third one, the last one, is called Milkweed. Butterflies dubbed monarch, wisps of sunrise laced with starry night, wind dancing in impossible migration. But beauty needs a substrate. Enter humble milkweed, bleeding creamy latex when wounded, once thriving here and there and elsewhere, once prized for salve, life preserver, stuffing, and more, then deemed nuisance, tagged for summary extirpation, those dependent, fragile flashes of splendor fading in tandem. Finally, straws firmly grasped, one incipient fall, 6 hopeful milkweeds joined my little meadow, chicken wire protection from the dog, botanical competition thinned. Spring saw a return of the special lightish green, long, firm-veined ovals reaching out. Alas, no flowers and no seed cases, not yet. I hovered and tended, waited and pondered. With a flourishing spread, subterranean rhizomes announced unseen burrowing come second summer, and third, and then fragrant rosy clusters thrusting tumescent pods, and a few monarchs. Late summer's yellowing became autumn brown. Several hulls opened a crack, releasing fluffy messengers to ride the frosty breeze, but most remained clamped shut. Winter settled in, chill blasts split some others, many lost seedlings to fall into a frozen embrace, lucky ones cradled by the nearby hemlock to await a better fate. But the determined husks hung on through colds despawned till the ordained day, only then releasing tufts of faith and vernal renewal to waft on nature's breath, needful spots sought to build anew and summon again sovereign wonders. Thank you.
Loud applause here at Char's, Jen. I don't know if you could hear that, but
Thank you very much.
Made me homesick for my childhood, and then looking at the monarch butterflies and the milkweed all the time when I was a kid, it was just an iconic image out of my childhood. It was just like, oh yeah, I miss that.
There you go. And my mom remembers picking milkweed during World War II. Yeah, in this case for life preservers. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing
Thank
that. And, I just want to say, for those of you who haven't bought Jennifer's book, it is well worth it. Like she said, it's poetry books are often these slender little things, but that's beefy, and you can enjoy it. There's lots of beautiful poetry in there, so you can enjoy it for a long time. It's not a short read. It's a good longer one. So, all right.
Thank you very much, Derek.
In the chat there. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to Qualicum Beach now, and we've got our Wonneck there tuning up the guitar. We're going to have some music.
Very good. Can you hear me all right? Which is always the age-old question here.
Sounds good to me.
Is that right?
Heard of Char? Char is
It's a quiet one, so.
Lovely.
Is it going to be okay?
It's perfect, yes.
Very good, very good. Thank you so much. I think I'll just do the one song. It's kind of long, I think. We almost met on a bus. I sat beside you and on your scarf, just the two of us. I smiled, you frowned. Though you couldn't breathe, it was me who felt like he'd drowned. You were deep in a book, I wondered what kind. Historical fiction or obscure and sublime. Maybe a cheap romance, would you think I could play a part? Or the science of the mind, I wouldn't know where to start. Is love still a blessing when it can't be found? My heart's gone missing on the far side of town. Maybe it's a fantasy, an escape from the day. I wouldn't be surprised, still it'd be sad in a way. I know it's not the Bible, I'd recognize the font. It's not a graphic novel, though that would be cool. I can see that it's not. Oh, now you put your hair up behind your ear. I ne'er saw true beauty till this night, me and Shakespeare. Maybe what you're reading's from some bestseller list about unrequited love. That's one of the subjects that I know the best. Is love still a blessing when it can't be found? My heart has gone missing on the far side of town. Just then the bus lurched, and you fell right into me. But all I could think of was Whitman or Thoreau or Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. You turned and looked at me, your eyes so green. I imagined it all as a moonlit lake scene. And then you asked me if I had a long way to go. Your voice was perfect, so soft and low. And then I thought how your question just hung there, like a puff of frosted breath in the cold winter air. And then I thought how much I like similes, how a few simple words can possess such subtlety. In the silence you turned away, and I realized I'd waited too long. I guess timing can be as important as plot and dialogue. Is love still a blessing when it can't be found? My heart has gone missing on the far side of town. Then you pulled on the cord. The next stop was yours. I panicked inside, but then rose to lay you out the doors. I wondered, should I get off too? Such a long walk home. But I was frozen, and then like reading the last line of a book, the moment was gone. I watched you walk away, wondering if we would have loved with a love that was more than love. Why do I feel the need to quote Edgar Poe and just hello would have been enough? I'd like to say it didn't turn out that way. That I didn't spend the next couple of hours on that bus, and the snow didn't turn into freezing, pelting rain. But it did. And I caught a cold to go along with my broken heart. And it was dumb because I was just a reader, and it was only supposed to be the great writers who suffered for their art. Is love still a blessing when it can't be found? My heart has gone missing on the far side of town. There we go. Very good. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mark. That was fabulous storytelling. I mean, you blend all the elements of good storytelling, and then you add music to it on top of it. I'm in awe.
Oh, nice.
I love that song, and I'm going to request it when you come here.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to move on back to live and in person. We've got Joe Lunchbucket here, aka Bob, our octogenarian plus in Port Alberni, going to share a piece with us. He's got a full page to go on tonight. He might go a little bit over 5 minutes, but we'll let him get away with it without getting the cane out. Only because he's old.
How's that? My pacemaker doctor ordered many tests and called me in for an appointment. Since COVID, doctors don't talk to you. By phone, I recall a past friend being given an offer he couldn't refuse. If you don't have the operation, you will die, but you can die on operating table too. I expected the worst, but she calmly asked how I was. I answered that I thought I was here to get her prognosis. Apparently, I passed my thyroid tests, and I didn't even study for them. If I had done as well in high school, I might have been a doctor instead of a tree surgeon. Inevitability of mortality weighs heavily on us over the hill gang, and we know that it doesn't go by seniority. The lucky ones are those that haven't lost their mobility and drive. To be clear, I'm referring to wheelchairs and cars, not Viagra. The fairer sex outlives macho man, and women ask us to dance in our age of senility. I didn't recognize my foreman's wife that I haven't seen for 3 years when she called me by name. She's 97 and I'm an octogenarian, and I'm reluctant to ask people's names that I should know. I contemplate if signing a Faustian pact would guarantee me longevity and memory like hers. We're not all born equal, and some win genetic and lottery luck of the draw, and divorce never saw. My younger workmate was a con artist that skirted the law. We thought he would cheat death, but surprisingly, he had a fatal flaw. I don't know what he died of, but I'm certain that it wasn't from a guilty conscience, because he never had one. This guy had 3 young ladies with child and did the honorable thing, married the one with the job. When he lost his staff job, he went on WCB, and we questioned if WCB should pay for hurt pride. He was a good partner, though, and stuck up for me in discussions on bus rides home. One topic was on priests abusing boys. In defense, I said that I must have been the homeliest altar boy in the parish because I never got altered. My falling partner patted me on the back and said, "Hey, if it happened to me, I'd lie about it too." I don't know if it's just my imagination, but each year I see more black vulture type birds circling over this old crowbait. People address me by name. Do I not recognize them because they aged and I didn't? Or is it Alzheimer's? Mechanics don't install $5,000 transmissions on cars with 1 million miles on them. Must society at great expense prolong our misery or only keep us breathing to biblical 70 lifespan? Because we've outlived our usefulness and are too expensive to maintain. When our pets suffer, we mercifully put them down. Will we progress from assisted to insisted dying? On another cheerful note, if we don't have an index pension and live too long, with inflation, will inflation put us at poverty level? Each funeral that I attend diminishes my circle of friends. As I was leaving one farewell party, someone said to take a number. When I asked what for, he said, "If your number is drawn, you get to host the next going away party."
Ouch. Thank you for that, Bob. Entertaining as always. All right. Okay, we're going back into the Zoom world here now, and Herb is going to share some work with us. What
Hi.
you got for us tonight, Herb?
Oh, I've got a couple of poems. I've just made a substitution, so I won't run out of time. A lot has happened since I've seen you guys, and first of all, I'm in the traditional lands of the Katzie people of Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge. And secondly, I got reno-evicted again. I had to move in December, so that's from one reno-eviction to another. So I'm doing good there. And in December, I got inducted into the Writers International Network as a distinguished poet and writer. And it says my name right on it. There, got a medal. And lastly, as of today, I'm in Greece. I'm sitting in Maple Ridge, but 3 of my poems are in a magazine in Greece,
Well,
just published today online.
congratulations.
Thank you. So I've got a short one here. We call it monetizing. Thanks for Thanks for monetizing the free service, people. Always happy to contribute to greed and gouging. Always a pleasure to help a friend turn on us. Such excitement. Never a dull moment crashing through courtesy and respect. Yeah, it's fun. Speaking of respect, I just love the mansion you built. I have to respect your initiation and your drive. And oh yes, profiteering. Good one. How to make a fortune in troubled times. Gotta love that. I know, thanks to the pandemic, when our heads were turned. Admirable tactic. Good play. And I love the way you snuck in that extra free fee hidden away in the pseudonym. Clever stuff. I should have such a business tactic. Well, congratulations, by the way, for pricing hundreds of the poor among us from your formerly free service. Who needs them anyway, right? It's been nice doing business with you. Ciao. Okay, so I've substituted this shorter one for the longer one I was going to do. The Road to Peace. This one I wrote and was picked up in Australia. And I got to read on an international conference on empathy in London from here, and another one in Australia, the home place of the Virtual School of Empathy. And so I've been everywhere lately. The Road to Peace. The road to peace lies along Forgiveness Boulevard, where minds come to meet and lead their masters to Understanding Street. At Mutual Square, where hands tend to shake other hands in friendly greeting and lead each other to Hugger's Lane, where compliments are served and invitations are exchanged, where candles are lit only in celebration of life itself. And eyes shine and delight to see you, whoever you are, for this is the center of friendship state, a county of conviviality and grace, where celebration replaces disputes and wars. This is where kindness is stocked in abundance and granted free in exchange for one's misery and grudges and put-downs and threats. This is where Freedom Cross is located, to greet all pilgrims from anguish and disillusionment, from cruelty and torture and bombings and shootings. In this land of peace, smiles of dominion over hate are given freely instead of having to be smuggled in. Come, walk with me along Forgiveness Boulevard, where dreams are built. This is the land of incense and roses, where one's nose follows its dreams, where feelings are warm and good, and touch becomes more sensitive to the human inside the human. And the eyes can see more clearly now, and on a clear day, they can see forever. And they can see into another's soul and see oneself there, a unity not otherwise recognized in daily toil. This is where the taste of honey greets the pessimistic tray and shares that sweet nectar of love. This is the home of the soul it is destined to find, and to dwell with fellow converts from wild, abandon, and indulgence and enmity. The 7 deadly sins do not dwell here. This is faith without prejudice. This is where lives Nirvana, Zen, and all the gods of peace and love and respect and dignity and eternal love of thy neighbor, welcoming all who flee evil. This is the ultimate peace. Come, walk with me along Forgiveness Boulevard, where the sun always triumphs over the rain and hail of hatred, and the lanes of transgression are foiled by simple love of fellow being. Simple choice. Life over strife. To life over death of will and lousy choices. Choice of survival made possible. Peace. The easier and the wiser choice. Thank you.
Beautiful, Herb. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I'd walk down Forgiveness Boulevard with you any day.
Thank you.
Over and over. And we'd all walk down that road every day. Absolutely.
All is welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, we're going to pop back to live and in person. Karen Poirier is going to share some writing with us. We're getting close to the end here. We save the best for last. You are doing so well, Char, I'll tell you. No, well, you're a one-person technical wonder. She does it all. It's amazing.
This is an excerpt from a book that I've completed. The book's called 1,000 Days, and it parallels my parents' experiences during World War II. This particular part is the forced marches while my father was stationed at Wootton Creek on the Isle of Wight. It's a little island in the south of England, between England and France. What's he trying to do, murder us? Dunno, but if he is, he's doing a good job of it. Cut the bullshit up there. Move, move, move. Lloyd refocused. He picked up the pace and regained a vigorous momentum. They pressed on. Left, 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 right, left. The sounds of their boots hitting the gravel road mingled with the chattering wall of spring rain. On and on they marched with intense muscles that pounded the earth. Directly in front of Lloyd, a bouncing 75-pound army backpack strapped on Dan's back held his gaze, and its movement kept his strides advancing forward. The bulging backpack with its canvas flaps, accompanied by a matching kit saddling Dan's front, and a canvas case slung over his left shoulder, rocked with a rhythmic motion, hypnotic and dripping with drizzly raindrops. The gravel road beneath their feet was quickly turning to mud. Tiny rivulets meandered through the rocks and crevices, carving paths and creating shiny patterns in the road. In the quick movements of the forced march, the rain splashed his boots and pants. Reminds me of the slop at home, Saskatchewan mud, or rather gumbo that could suck up and sink a horse all the way to its knees, he thought. I remember Dad's wagon sliding uncontrollably, then rolling over and sinking in the mud after a heavy rainfall. What a job it was getting that out. Took a team of horses and 3 men to pull that wagon out of the mud. What a mess. Mud stuck to everything. Left, 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 right, left. His breath pulsed, pounding. Lloyd felt an ache drift up from the soles of his feet, through the sinewy muscles in his calves, knees, and thighs to his core. His spine and mind numbed. He felt fatigue in his legs and feet, carrying him to what felt like the ends of the earth, as though manipulated with a marionette string. In perfect foul formation, like a well-oiled and synergized engine, his arms and legs moved mechanically in step with his fellow Camerons, carrying his awful load of ammo, homesickness, fatigue, and a prayer for an end to this exhaustive misery. With steely strength for 11 miles, Lloyd moved mechanically, his thoughts of a hot dinner when he got back to camp the only thing keeping him going. Push, push, push. If they keep this up, none of us will be left alive to fight. I'd like to push them pot-bellied bastards giving the orders. See how they like it, Lloyd silently grumbled to himself. A quick sideways glance told Lloyd they had just passed a tumble-down shack on the right side of the gravel road. Damn, we're only halfway. We've been up and down this road so many times, I'm surprised I've any leather left in my boots, he thought. Sloppy sweat steamed down his forehead and into his eyes. His body was soaked and cooled inside of his sturdy army uniform. I wonder what else they have in store for us, Lloyd thought. Yesterday it was a 100-foot cliff to climb with these loads on our backs. Those damn cliffs straight up. Poor Mike had a hell of a time with it. I can still see the poor bugger struggling to pull himself up. I thought he'd burst an artery, his face was so red, and he was gasping for air. Bob and I cheered him on while waiting at the top. We had to pull him up and over by the shoulders of his uniform. Lloyd felt a mid-race slump, an inevitable segment of an exercise when the finish feels like it's light years away, and an impossible realization. Keep your head down. Count. 1, 2, 3. His thoughts continued. Why is the training so physically and mentally exhausting? Something big is going to happen. Must be. We have to be training for a tough fight ahead. Those boats. I'll never forget one night on an exercise in an LCD boat. 100 of us, crammed so tight we could barely move, and we had to land that baby in the dark. Left, 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 right, left. That evening, Lloyd needed to smoke, and he went for a quick walk to the edge of their encampment, stopped, and stared out at the Salent. He tried to imagine what a battle in France would be like, and he wondered if they were ready for German bullets and bombs flying at them. Are the Germans waiting for us? Ah, the Brits must know what they're doing. Or do they? I guess one day we'll find out. We're not far away. We'd be in and out in a matter of hours and back to England again, he thought. Chow's on. Better get to the mess before it's all gone, Bob said, interrupting Lloyd's thoughts. Too tired to eat, said Lloyd. You need to fuel up. No rest tomorrow, so better get some food into you. Lloyd walked behind Dan and Bob to the mess tent. Mike hurried to catch up to them. The rain stopped, leaving shiny puddles along the pathway. At the door, in a steady beat, wind flapped a canvas cover, and as they entered, the heat radiating from the burners and the smell of fried potatoes drew them in.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for taking us there. Not a place we want to go, but we were there, absolutely, feeling it all. Thank you so much. All right, I'm the last reader. Going to jump up to the mic here and wind it up. Okay, yeah, we have contact. All right. So I've just got a couple of poems I want to share with you tonight that have come my way in the last few weeks. The first one's called Entanglement, about quantum physics and entanglement and how two things can be millions of miles away and be connected. You know all about it. And yeah, so I'm hiding in the tall grass in the vacant lot beside our house. The first stars have just pricked the sky, and my brother is shouting, "Ollie, Ollie, in free," while my father stands in the doorway with light spilling onto the porch, calling us in for the night. For a few moments, I am still enough to be one with the rabbits who come out to nibble the grass. I am not the young boy who will enter the house and obediently lay across his father's lap to have his teeth scrubbed before bed. I am not the shy child who cried his first day of school. I am one with the purple darkness that peers through my eyes at a strange world and hears my father calling across the star-dotted sky. I am nebulous and ancient as the dark matter where spooky action is taking place at a distance. From there, I watch my young body rise and go to enter my father's house as if nothing happened out in the tall grass. But crawling into bed, I feel the itch and sting of tiny cuts crisscrossing my legs and find it hard to sleep from that day forward. I don't know if anybody else had that in childhood, but I had those moments where everything just felt very unreal and you just felt like, I'm not really here, am I? And, you know, I think we're closer to the divine when we first come, and then it kind of dulls down as we get older, right? We spend the rest of our lives trying to get back to it, but anyway. And then this one's called For the Love of Animals. It's just the appreciation I felt for how much our dog loves my wife. Makes my love pale in comparison. When my wife goes out for groceries, her black and white fur ball bays at the door, then curls in a ball of grief on the doormat and waits for her return. I carry my phone like a lover to the couch to fritter away a half hour on Twitter. 3 tweets in and already it's clear the Neanderthals are not extinct, but camouflaged in modern meat suits, knuckle-dragging their righteous indignation across the planet, flinging poop at each other and the world. The dog bays mournfully again, reminds me of how in the sunset shadows the other wild ones wait for us to honor them with our attention. I have seen them in my dreams, their eyes glowing in the tall grass, fur tinged with silver light, hearts pure as Haneman's devotion to love and service. If you listen long enough, you can hear them purring in their barreled chests, their patient panting, their long keening howls at night. They drink from the same lake where we go to slake our deepest thirst when we sleep, not snoring, but sucking up the dark and sacred water that tastes of the stars. If you're lucky, one will snatch you up by the scruff of your neck and shake you awake, shake you until all judgment falls away and you can love the way they do. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight out there in Zoom land and here live in Char's Landing. It's been a really wonderful evening. And I have to say, I don't know if it's me, but I feel like the level of work that comes is just getting better and better every week as we go along. And it's really, I think, co-inspiration that's going on. And let's keep it up. It's great. So next month we have Cynthia Sharp coming over. I don't know if she's going to make it here in person. It might be by Zoom because she's over on the mainland. But we had her here a while back. She's a wonderful poet. And she's got a new book of poetry out called Ordinary Light. And so she's going to share a lot of that with us. It's just like having a beautiful meditation listening to Cynthia. She's just so mesmerizing. So that's going to be really good. So that's the last weekend. Karl, what's the date on that?
The 26th.
26th of April. Okay, the last Wednesday of April. Time is flying along in spring here. So let's just have a big round of applause for Char for hosting us. And don't forget to she sends out a little email usually when she puts it up on YouTube, but keep an eye out for that. It's always fun to go back and look at some of the highlights from the night and relive a few things. So thank you, Char, for all you do. Yeah, all right. Yeah. And thank you to Karl as well, of course, for being our moderator. He's the man. Yeah. Keeping us on track.
And thank you to Derek.
Thank all of you readers, because you are the ones who make this thing happen. Really, we just float along in your coattails and enjoy what you do. So thank you for doing that, and keep writing and bringing more work next month. And thank you for those of you who joined us just watching. We appreciate that too. Listening, that's wonderful. So stay safe, everyone, and we'll look forward to seeing you all again in April. And for those of you here in Shards, we're going to stick around and have a little chat with David and Kathleen, who've come from Gibsons. So bye for now.
Thank
Good
you.
night, all. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Great stuff.
So long.
Thank you, guys.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, Jen.
Hi, Char.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody out in Zoomland. Good night, everybody out in Zoomland.
Good, Derek.